My name is Braxton. I am 32 years old, and I never thought I would have to defend my right to sleep in my own master bedroom. After years of hard work as a software engineer, I finally bought my dream home. I occasionally let my parents and younger brother Ryan stay with me when they visit. But when they demanded I give up my master bedroom to my unemployed brother, I was blindsided. Before I continue this unbelievable story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had family take advantage of your generosity. Growing up, it was always clear who the favorite child was in our household. My younger brother Ryan could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. When he got B grades, they took him out for ice cream. When I got straight A's, it was simply expected. Ryan was the star athlete who my dad cheered for at every game, while my academic achievements were acknowledged with a distracted nod. This was the pattern of my childhood, but I never let it stop me from working hard and pursuing my goals. Throughout high school, I maintained top grades while working part-time at the local grocery store. I saved every penny I could, knowing that my college fund was significantly smaller than what my parents had set aside for Ryan. When acceptance letters came in, I chose the state university that offered me the best scholarship, even though it meant staying close to home, while watching Ryan get sent to an expensive private school. When his time came, college was a balancing act of classes, study sessions, and multiple jobs. While other students enjoyed the full college experience, I was delivering pizzas on weeknights and working at the campus library on weekends. I lived in the cheapest apartment I could find, often skipping meals to save money. Meanwhile, Ryan dropped out after 3 semesters, claiming college wasn't his thing. Yet, my parents were understanding and supportive of his decision. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a software company. The pay was modest, but I continued living frugally. No vacations, no expensive clothes, no fancy restaurants. Every extra dollar went straight into my savings account. I brown-bagged lunches, used public transportation, and lived with roommates, despite being in my mid-20s. My friends often questioned why I was so strict with my budget, but I had a clear goal in mind: homeownership. For 6 years, I watched my savings grow. I worked overtime whenever possible, took on freelance coding projects, and eventually earned a promotion to senior software engineer. The salary increase was substantial, but my lifestyle remained unchanged. Ryan, meanwhile, bounced between jobs, apartments, and relationships, always with my parents' financial support as a safety net. When I finally had enough for a down payment, I spent months researching neighborhoods, mortgage rates, and property values. I wanted a home that would be both comfortable now and a good investment for the future. After an exhaustive search, I found it. A beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with good schools and growing property values. The master bedroom suite was especially perfect, with large windows overlooking the backyard, a walk-in closet, and an ensuite bathroom with a garden tub and separate shower. The day I signed the closing papers was one of the proudest moments of my life. At 30 years old, I had achieved something significant entirely through my own efforts. My parents attended the small housewarming gathering I hosted, and while they seemed happy for me, I noticed their comments focused more on how the extra bedrooms would be perfect for family visits, rather than congratulating me on my achievement. I spent the first few months making the house truly mine. I renovated the master bathroom, adding heated floors, and upgrading the fixtures. I converted 1 bedroom into a home office, furnished another as a proper guest room, and left the third as a multi-purpose space. When furnishing the master bedroom, I splurged on a high-quality mattress and elegant furniture, finally allowing myself one luxury after years of sacrifice. My parents visited occasionally, staying in the guest room for a weekend here and there. These visits were generally pleasant. though I noticed small things. My mother rearranging my kitchen cabinets without asking. My father commenting on the excessive square footage for a single person, both of them reminiscing about how Ryan would love the large backyard. I brushed these comments aside, attributing them to typical parent behavior, rather than seeing them as warning signs. Ryan visited less frequently. Usually when he needed something, he would compliment the house excessively, often making remarks like "must be nice," or "some people have all the luck." I tried to explain that luck had little to do with it, but he would just roll his eyes. During one visit, he accidentally spilled red wine on my new living room carpet. During another, he left water running in the guest bathroom, causing minor water damage. Each time, my parents defended him, saying accidents happen, and suggesting I was being too particular about just a house. Despite these tensions, I valued family connection and continued to welcome them into my home. I never imagined these small boundary crossings were just the beginning of a much larger battle for the very space I had worked so hard to call my own. The real trouble began on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was working late, debugging a complex piece of code, when my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice that particular mix of concerned and manipulative that I had learned to recognize from childhood. "Braxton, honey, we have a situation with Ryan," she began. "His landlord raised the rent again, and with his hours being cut at work, he just cannot afford it anymore. He has to be out by the end of the month." I felt the familiar tightness in my chest that appeared whenever Ryan had a problem that somehow became my problem. "That is tough, Mom. Is he looking at new apartments?" I asked, already sensing where this conversation was heading. "Well, that is the thing," she said. "Good apartments are so expensive now, and with his credit from that misunderstanding with the credit card company last year." Her voice trailed off expectantly. I sighed, knowing I was being maneuvered into offering. "He can stay in the guest room temporarily while he looks for a new place," I found myself saying. "But just for a few weeks, okay? I value my space." My mother's voice immediately brightened. "Oh, you are such a good brother. I told Ryan you would help. He will be a perfect houseguest, I promise. He has really matured lately." When Ryan arrived 3 days later, temporarily seemed to have different meanings for us. He had 3 suitcases, boxes of gaming equipment, and his guitar collection. It was more belongings than someone would bring for a short stay. Still, I helped him get settled in the guest room, which I had prepared with fresh linens, towels, and even a small desk where he could search for jobs and apartments. The first week went relatively well. Ryan kept mostly to himself, though I noticed he made no mention of apartment hunting. He slept until noon most days, leaving dishes in the sink and wet towels on the bathroom floor. But I chose not to make an issue of it so early in his stay. I reminded myself that having him there was temporary, and maintaining peace was worth a few unwashed dishes. 8 days into Ryan's stay, my parents called with news that they were driving down to check on how things are going. This surprise visit set off alarm bells, but I welcomed them, hoping their presence might actually motivate Ryan to start his apartment search. When they arrived, I was struck by how they entered my house, as if it were their own vacation property. My father immediately took control of the thermostat, while my mother began unpacking groceries she had brought, rearranging my refrigerator in the process. They had brought an air mattress, suggesting they planned to stay for more than the afternoon visit I had anticipated. That evening, I prepared dinner for everyone, making my signature pasta dish that had always received compliments from friends. As we ate, the conversation centered entirely around Ryan's recent misfortunes, with my parents portraying him as a victim of circumstance rather than someone facing the consequences of his choices. "Ryan has such potential," my father said, patting my brother's shoulder. "He just needs the right opportunity to shine, and some stability," my mother added, looking pointedly around my dining room. "A supportive environment makes all the difference." Ryan nodded along, adding, "It is hard to focus on getting ahead when you are always worried about making rent. Some people don't realize how lucky they are to have security." I felt my face grow hot, It is not luck, Ryan. I worked multiple jobs through college and saved for years to buy this house. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table before my mother changed the subject. After dinner, as I was washing dishes, I overheard my parents in the guest room with Ryan. "This room is really too small for all your things," my mother was saying. "And that twin bed can't be comfortable for someone your height." "I know," Ryan replied. "And the closet is tiny. Half my clothes are still in suitcases. Braxton has so much space in the master." My father added in a lower voice that I could still clearly hear. "It seems excessive for just one person." I nearly dropped a plate. Were they seriously suggesting what I thought they were? I finished the dishes quickly and excused myself to my office, not trusting myself to respond calmly to what I had overheard. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my mother knocked on my bedroom door. She entered without waiting for a response and looked around appreciatively at my master suite. "This is really more like a small apartment than a bedroom," she commented. "The bathroom alone is bigger than our master bath at home. I designed it that way during the renovation," I said cautiously. I wanted a comfortable space to relax after long workdays. She sat on the edge of my bed, running her hand over the premium comforter I had splurged on. "You know, Ryan mentioned that the guest bed is hurting his back. He has that old football injury that flares up." I blinked in surprise. Ryan had played one season of high school football before quitting, and I had never heard of any injury. He never mentioned that before. Well, he wouldn't. Would he? He is not one to complain. This description was so contrary to the brother. I knew that I almost laughed. "I was thinking," she continued, "since you are at work all day and Ryan is here, it might make sense for him to use this room just until he gets back on his feet." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "Mom, this is my bedroom. In my house. That I pay for. Family helps family, Braxton," she replied, her voice taking on the disappointed tone that had always made me feel 2 inches tall as a child. "Your brother is going through a difficult time, and I am helping by giving him a place to stay," I insisted. "The guest room is perfectly comfortable. I stayed in it myself before the furniture for this room was delivered." My mother left with a dissatisfied sigh, and I locked my bedroom door that night for the first time since moving in. As I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I felt a growing uneasiness. What had started as a simple favor was beginning to feel like a takeover, and I wondered just how far my family was willing to go. My parents' quick visit to check on Ryan somehow extended into a full week. They took over the multi-purpose room, inflating their air mattress and unpacking their suitcases as if settling in for an extended stay. I found myself tiptoeing around my own house, trying to avoid confrontation while growing increasingly frustrated by their presence. On the 5th morning of their visit, I came downstairs to find my mother cooking breakfast, my father reading the newspaper at my kitchen island, and Ryan sprawled on the couch watching television. None of them were dressed for the day, and none had jobs to get to. I, meanwhile, had an important presentation at work and was already running late. "There is coffee in the pot, honey," my mother said, as I grabbed my travel mug. "We thought we would take Ryan shopping for some new clothes today. He has that interview tomorrow." This was the first I had heard of any job interview. "That is great news," I said, genuinely pleased. "What company?" Ryan waved dismissively without looking away from the television. "Some tech startup. Dad's golf buddy is the HR manager. We might be late getting back." My father added, "Do not hold dinner for us. And Braxton, while we are thinking about it, your mother and I wanted to discuss something with you." I glanced at my watch. "Can it wait until tonight? I really need to get to work." "It will just take a minute," my mother insisted, turning off the stove and wiping her hands. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it would make sense for you and Ryan to switch rooms." Though I had suspected this was coming, Hearing it stated so directly still took my breath away. Switch rooms? You mean give Ryan my master bedroom? It is just more practical, my father said in his no-nonsense tone. He is home all day. While you are at the office, he could use the extra space for his job search. And that attached bathroom would give everyone more privacy. The privacy of my own bedroom in my own house, you mean? I could feel my blood pressure rising. Dad, that is completely unreasonable. I bought this house. I renovated that bathroom with my own money. I paid for every piece of furniture in that room. My mother's expression hardened. Family should support each other, Braxton. Ryan would do the same for you if the situations were reversed. I almost laughed at the absurdity of this statement. Ryan had never supported me in any meaningful way, financially or emotionally. The answer is no. Ryan is welcome to stay in the guest room while he gets back on his feet, but I am not giving up my bedroom. The tension in the kitchen was palpable as I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for the door. I have to go. We can talk more tonight. Throughout my workday, I received a barrage of text messages from my mother, ranging from guilt trips, Ryan is really struggling and you are not helping, to thinly veiled threats. Family remembers who was there in difficult times. By the time I returned home that evening, I had formulated what I thought was a reasonable compromise. I found my family in the living room, Ryan playing a video game at maximum volume while my parents watched with apparent fascination. I turned down the sound and stood in front of the television. I have given this some thought, I began. I want to help Ryan, but giving up my bedroom is not an option. Instead, I am willing to help him find an affordable apartment and assist with the security deposit. I can also let him extend his stay in the guest room for another month. Rather than seeing this as the generous offer it was, my family reacted with outrage. My father called me selfish. My mother began to cry, and Ryan stormed out of the room, slamming the door to the guest bedroom so hard that I heard a picture fall from the wall in the hallway. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in my house grew increasingly hostile. I would return from work to find things moved in the common areas. My mother had rearranged my living room furniture to improve the flow. My father had adjusted the settings on my smart thermostat and changed the Wi-Fi password. Ryan had helped himself to my clothes, claiming he needed a dress shirt for his interview and had not had time to iron his own. The situation reached a new level when I came home early one day due to a migraine and found Ryan in my bedroom, trying on my watches. He jumped when he saw me in the doorway. "Dude, ever heard of knocking?" he said, as if I had invaded his privacy rather than the other way around. "This is my bedroom, Ryan. Why are you in here?" He shrugged, returning my watch to the dresser with noticeable carelessness. "Just needed to check the time. There are clocks all over the house," I pointed out. "And your phone is in your hand." As he brushed past me, he bumped against my nightstand, knocking over a framed photograph. The glass cracked as it hit the floor. "Oops," he said without stopping. Accidents happen, but it was not an accident, and we both knew it. The photograph was of me at my college graduation, the only major life event my parents had attended without Ryan stealing the spotlight. I carefully picked up the frame, removing the shards of glass. When I confronted my parents about Ryan's invasion of my personal space, they dismissed my concerns. "He is just curious about your things, Braxton. It is normal for brothers to share. We have never shared." I corrected them, and we are not starting now. That evening, my family announced they were taking me to dinner at my favorite restaurant. Their treat. Suspicious, but hopeful, this might be a peace offering. I agreed. The meal started pleasantly enough, with neutral conversations about old neighborhood friends and my parents' garden back home. Just as I was beginning to relax, my father cleared his throat. "Braxton, we have some news. Ryan lost his job yesterday." I looked at Ryan in confusion. "What job? I thought you had an interview this week." "He was working part-time at the mall," my mother explained. But they cut his position. And the interview. Well, it did not work out. Ryan stared at his plate. They said I was overqualified. The point is, my father continued, your brother needs support right now. More than just a temporary place to crash. I put down my fork, suddenly understanding why they had brought me to a public place for this conversation. They thought I would not make a scene. What exactly are you suggesting? My mother reached across the table to take my hand. We think Ryan should move in permanently. In the master bedroom. You're gone all day at work, and he needs a comfortable space where he can get back on his feet. Permanently? I repeated, pulling my hand away. You want me to permanently give up my bedroom in my own house to my unemployed brother? It is the right thing to do, my father said firmly. Family first, Braxton. Always. As I looked at their expectant faces, I realized this had been their plan all along. The temporary stay, the extended visit, the escalating demands, all building to this moment. When they expected me to hand over the most private part of my home to the person who had always taken precedence over me in their eyes. Absolutely not, I said, my voice steady, despite my internal turmoil. This conversation is over. The rest of the meal passed in frigid silence, and the drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. As we entered the house, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The door to my bedroom was ajar, and lights were on inside. I ran upstairs to find several of Ryan's suitcases open on my bedroom floor, his clothes already hanging in my closet. What the hell is this? I demanded, gesturing at Ryan's belongings strewn across my bedroom floor. My parents and brother had followed me upstairs and now stood in the doorway, their expressions a mix of defiance and feigned innocence. We thought we would get a head start on the move, my mother said, as if she were simply helping rearrange furniture, rather than orchestrating a hostile takeover of my personal space. There is no move, I stated firmly. I never agreed to this. Ryan is not taking my bedroom. My father stepped forward, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he had used throughout my childhood, when laying down rules that were not to be questioned. Braxton, this house was always meant to be a family resource. Your mother and I helped you with the down payment. Remember? This statement hit me like a physical blow. Yes, they had given me $5,000 toward my down payment. A gift I had gratefully accepted and acknowledged with a thank you card and a special dinner. But their contribution represented less than 5% of what I had saved, and at no point had there been any suggestion that this gift came with strings attached. That was a gift, I said, not an investment in a family timeshare. This is my house, purchased with my money, maintained with my salary, and governed by my rules. Ryan scoffed, pushing past our parents to continue unpacking. You have always had everything handed to you, Braxton. The good grades, the scholarships, the high-paying job. Some of us have to struggle in the real world. The irony of this statement was so profound that I actually laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Handed to me? I worked 3 jobs in college while you partied through your trust fund. I lived with roommates and ate ramen for years to save for this house, while you bounced from one parental bailout to another. Nothing in my life has ever been handed to me. Least of all, this house. That is enough, my mother interjected, her eyes welling with tears that I once would have done anything to prevent. I will not listen to you speak to your brother this way. Family supports each other, Braxton. If you cannot understand that, perhaps we have failed as parents. Family supports each other, I repeated. Is that what you call this? Invading my home, violating my privacy, and attempting to take over the space I worked years to afford? That is not support, Mom. That is exploitation. My father's face reddened. Watch your tone, young man. Your mother and I have always wanted what is best for both our boys. Both? I challenged. When have you ever put my needs on equal footing with Ryan's? When have you ever expected him to sacrifice for me the way you are demanding I sacrifice for him right now." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father broke it with a statement that would forever change my relationship with my family. "If you cannot find it in your heart to help your brother in his time of need, perhaps we should all leave. Is that what you want, Braxton? To cut ties with your family over a bedroom?" The manipulation was so transparent that it might have been comical in any other context. "This is not about a bedroom," I said quietly. "This is about respect. My home is the one thing in my life that is unquestionably mine, earned through my own hard work and sacrifice. If you cannot respect that, then yes, perhaps you should leave." My mother gasped as if I had slapped her. "I cannot believe you would choose a house over your family." "I am not choosing a house over family," I corrected her. "I am choosing self-respect over continued manipulation. There is a difference." As the argument escalated, Ryan continued unpacking, a smug smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He had seen this pattern play out countless times before. He wanted something. My parents pressured me to provide it, and eventually I gave in to keep the peace. But this time was different. This time, I was not going to bend. When I insisted that Ryan remove his belongings from my room immediately, my parents announced they were going for a drive to cool down. I suspected they expected me to relent by the time they returned, perhaps even help Ryan finish settling into my bedroom. Instead, I used their absence to call a locksmith and have my locks changed. The locksmith had just finished when I received a call from my Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister, and the only family member who had ever acknowledged the blatant favoritism shown to Ryan. "Braxton, I just got off the phone with your mother," she began. "She is beside herself, saying you are throwing the family out on the street. What is going on?" I explained the situation, my voice breaking as I detailed the escalating demands and boundary violations. They actually started moving Ryan's things into my bedroom without my permission. "Aunt Lisa, while I was at work, who does that?" My aunt sighed heavily. "I was afraid something like this would happen when your mother told me about Ryan moving in with you. She mentioned their plan to gradually transition him into the master bedroom because it would be better for his self-esteem than the guest room." "They's launchy. Their plan?" I repeated. "How long have they been planning this?" "From what I gathered, since before he lost his apartment," she admitted. "Your mother mentioned something about his lease ending being perfect timing to implement their idea." "I am so sorry, Braxton. I should have warned you." The realization that my family had been orchestrating this takeover from the beginning, that Ryan's housing crisis might have been manufactured specifically for this purpose, left me feeling physically ill. When I hung up with my aunt, I sat on my living room couch, surrounded by the home I had worked so hard to create, and felt utterly alone. When my parents returned hours later, they found themselves unable to enter the house with their keys. They called my phone repeatedly, but I let it go to voicemail, needing time to process the depth of their betrayal. Finally, I texted them, "Your belongings are packed and waiting on the front porch. Ryan's things from the guest room too. The items he put in my bedroom are in garbage bags. You have 30 minutes to collect everything before I call a donation truck." The response was immediate and explosive. My mother called, crying hysterically about how I could do this to my own family. My father texted threats about legal action, claiming they had tenant rights after staying for over a week. Ryan sent a stream of profanity-laden messages, accusing me of being selfish and heartless. Through it all, I remained in my locked house, watching through the window as they eventually collected their belongings from the porch, loading them into their car amid dramatic gestures and conversations with concerned-looking neighbors. As they drove away, my father rolled down his window and shouted the words that would echo in my mind for months to come. "Not your house. Never was. To be in, but it was my house. The mortgage was in my name. The vast majority of the down payment had come from my savings. The renovations had been paid for with my bonus. The furniture had been selected with my taste and comfort in mind. Every inch of this space represented years of my hard work and sacrifice. And for the first time in my life, I was not going to let my family take what was rightfully mine. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed a day to regroup, to process what had happened, and to secure my home against further invasion. The emotional toll of the confrontation had left me drained, but I was also experiencing an unfamiliar feeling. Relief. For once, I had stood up to my family's unreasonable demands instead of capitulating to keep the peace. My momentary calm was shattered when I heard the sound of a key in my front door around noon. I rushed to the entryway, certain the locksmith had missed a lock, only to find the door secured. Through the sidelight window, I saw Ryan trying different keys in the lock. My father, standing behind him, holding what appeared to be a toolbox. I opened the door, but kept the security chain engaged. "What are you doing? We made copies of your house keys months ago," Ryan said with a shrug. "Thought they might come in handy." "Guess you changed the locks, huh? That is breaking and entering," I told them. "Leave now, or I am calling the police." My father stepped forward. "Do not be dramatic, Braxton. We are family. Now, let us in, so we can talk about this situation like adults." "There is nothing to talk about," I insisted. "You tried to take over my house. You moved Ryan's things into my bedroom without permission. You violated every reasonable boundary. We have nothing more to discuss." "Actually," my father countered, "we have your mother's doctor appointment to discuss. She was so upset by your behavior last night that her blood pressure spiked. She is at urgent care right now." The familiar guilt began to creep in. Had I really caused my mother a health crisis? Was I being unreasonable? But then I remembered my aunt's revelation about their premeditated plan and steeled myself against the manipulation. "I am sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "But emotional blackmail is not going to work this time. Please leave my property." As I began to close the door, my father jammed his foot in the opening. "Listen to me, Braxton. This situation is not over. That bedroom belongs to Ryan now. We always intended this house to be for both our sons." "Both your sons?" I repeated incredulously. "If that were true, why is only my name on the mortgage? Why have I been making every payment? Why was I the one who saved for years, while Ryan squandered every opportunity you gave him? Because you were always the responsible one," my father shouted, his composure finally cracking. "You were supposed to provide for your brother. That was the arrangement." His words hit me like a physical blow. "What arrangement?" "I never agreed to any arrangement. It was understood," he insisted. "Your mother and I helped with the down payment because this was meant to be a family house. Ryan needs stability, and you have the means to provide it." "So I was supposed to buy a house for Ryan to live in?" I clarified, my voice hollow with disbelief. "While continuing to pay the mortgage and all expenses?" "Do not act so surprised," Ryan interjected. "You always knew I would need help. That is what big brothers do." In that moment, everything clicked into place. The years of favoring Ryan, of downplaying my achievements while celebrating his minimal efforts, of expecting me to work harder, sacrifice more, give endlessly, while he took without gratitude or reciprocation, all of it had been building to this. The assumption that my purpose in life was to provide for my brother. "Get off my property," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Now, before I call the police and file a restraining order." "You would not dare," my father scoffed. "We are family." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, maintaining eye contact with him as I did so. When the dispatcher answered, I reported attempted breaking and entering. My father and Ryan retreated to their car before the call ended. but not before my father delivered a parting shot. Not your house. Never was. We helped you with the down payment. After they left, I sank to the floor of my entryway, my back against the door, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not out of sadness or regret, but from the overwhelming realization of how deeply dysfunctional my family relationships had always been. I had spent my entire life seeking approval that would never come, trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Later that evening, I received a text from my mother. We are staying at the Comfort Inn on Highway 9, room 142. Come by. When you are ready to apologize and discuss Ryan moving back in, the master key is at the front desk if you want to drop it off tonight. The sheer audacity of this message, the absolute certainty that I would eventually cave to their demands, sparked something in me. In all our years of conflict and manipulation, I had never felt such clarity about the toxic nature of our relationship. It was as if a fog had lifted, allowing me to see the pattern that had defined my life. Sacrifice, appease, apologize, repeat. Not this time. This time, I was breaking the cycle. I spent that night alone in my house, truly alone for the first time since Ryan had moved in. I walked from room to room, reclaiming each space. In the guest bedroom, I stripped the sheets Ryan had used and opened the windows to air out the lingering scent of his cologne. In my home office, I restored the settings on my computer that he had changed. In the kitchen, I reorganized the cabinets my mother had rearranged. When I reached my bedroom, I stood in the doorway for a long moment before entering. This room, more than any other in the house, represented what I had achieved through years of hard work and sacrifice. The custom shelving I had installed myself, the luxury mattress I had researched for months before purchasing, the blackout curtains that ensured I could sleep well after late nights coding. Every detail reflected my tastes, my needs, my right to create a sanctuary for myself. Ryan's belongings were still scattered across the floor in the garbage bags I had hastily packed them in. I gathered these bags and placed them by the front door, planning to drop them at the hotel in the morning. Not out of capitulation, but as a final severing of ties. Then I returned to my bedroom, changed the sheets, and reclaimed my space. That night, as I lay in my own bed, in my own room, in my own house, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would no longer allow my family to determine my worth, dictate my choices, or diminish my achievements. From this moment forward, I would define the terms of our relationship, establish boundaries that protected my well-being, and if they could not respect those boundaries, I would have the courage to walk away. It was the most difficult and liberating decision I had ever made. The next morning, I called a lawyer before going to work. I explained the situation, including the keys my family had made without permission, their claim regarding the down payment, and my concerns about potential further intrusions. The lawyer listened carefully, then assured me that legally, the house was unquestionably mine. The gift of money toward a down payment does not create ownership rights, she explained, unless there was a written agreement stating the money was a loan or investment rather than a gift. They have no legal claim to your property. She advised me to document everything: the timing of events, the nature of the demands, any texts or emails demonstrating their intentions. She also suggested installing security cameras and considering a formal cease and desist letter if their behavior continued. Armed with this legal reassurance, I took immediate action to secure my home. I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering all entrances. I added motion sensor lights around the perimeter. I even reinforced the door frames for good measure. My home had always been my sanctuary, but now it was also my fortress. 2 days after the confrontation, I received a text from Ryan. Need to get the rest of my stuff from your house. Be there at 4. Have my bedroom key ready. The phrasing "my bedroom" made my blood boil, but I remained calm in my response. Your remaining belongings are in bags by the front door. I will place them on the porch at 3:55. You may collect them at 4 o'clock. Do not attempt to enter the house. Whatever," came his reply. "I need to look around to make sure you didn't keep anything valuable. Everything you owned is in those bags," I texted back. "If you attempt to enter my house, I will consider it trespassing and call the police immediately." When 4 o'clock arrived, I watched through my security camera as Ryan pulled up with my parents. I had anticipated this and had already contacted a security service. A uniformed guard stood on my porch beside the bags of Ryan's belongings. I watched on my phone as Ryan approached the house, clearly startled by the presence of the guard. He said something I couldn't hear, then gestured toward the door. The guard shook his head. My father joined them, his face reddening as he apparently argued for entry. Again, the guard refused. Eventually, they loaded Ryan's bags into the car and drove away. My mother turning to stare at the house with an expression of hurt betrayal that once would have devastated me. Over the next few weeks, I received a barrage of messages from family members. Some were flying monkeys, sent by my parents to pressure me into reconciliation on their terms. Others were genuinely concerned relatives trying to understand what had happened. I responded to the latter group with a brief, factual account of events, making it clear that I was not cutting contact with my family, but rather establishing boundaries that had to be respected. My parents alternated between guilt trips, "Your mother cries herself to sleep every night," and threats, "We will tell everyone what an ungrateful son you are." Ryan sent occasional messages that ranged from angry accusations to half-hearted apologies that inevitably included requests for money or favors. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries with a firmness that surprised even me. Each attempt at manipulation only strengthened my resolve to break the toxic patterns that had defined our relationship for decades. As word spread through my extended family, I received an unexpected call from my cousin Michael, who had always been close to Ryan. "I heard about what happened," he began awkwardly. "Look, I know it is not my business, but there is something you should know. Ryan has been bragging to me for months about his plan to move into your house permanently. He said your parents were helping him convince you to give up the master bedroom because it was, and I quote, wasted on someone who is just at work all day anyway." This confirmation of what my aunt had suggested, that their plan had been premeditated rather than a response to Ryan's housing emergency, settled like a stone in my stomach. "Thanks for telling me, Michael. I appreciate your honesty. For what it is worth," he added, "I think what they tried to do was really messed up. Your house, your rules, man." That simple acknowledgement from a family member, the first real validation that I was not being unreasonable, meant more than I could express. In the midst of this family drama, I found unexpected support from my friends and coworkers. When I finally shared what had been happening, my friend Jake immediately offered to help me reclaim my space. He arrived that weekend with paint, new decor items, and a determination to help me transform my home in ways that would make it feel fully mine again. We repainted the guest room that Ryan had occupied, replacing the neutral tones with a bold blue that I had always wanted. We rearranged furniture, hung new artwork, and even replaced the doorknobs and locks once more. Just to be certain, as superficial as these changes might seem, each one helped me reclaim ownership of my space and my life. My other friends joined in, turning the renovation into an impromptu house party. For the first time in weeks, laughter echoed through my home. As we worked, I shared more details about my family dynamics, about the years of subtle and not so subtle favoritism, about the expectation that I would always be the responsible one while Ryan would always be the one in need of rescue. That is some toxic family dynamics right there, my friend Elena commented as she helped me install new shelves in the former guest room, now transformed into a reading nook. "You know this is not your fault, right? You did not create this situation. I enabled it for a long time," I admitted. "I always gave in eventually. That is what children from dysfunctional families do to survive," she said. "But you are not that child anymore. You get to decide what kind of relationship you want with them now. That perspective shift, seeing myself as an adult with choices rather than a child desperate for approval, was transformative. I began to envision a future where my relationship with my family was governed by mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt, or perhaps a future with limited contact if respect proved impossible. About a month after the confrontation, I received an anonymous text from a number I did not recognize. "Just so you know, your parents are telling everyone they invested in your house, and you kicked them out. They are saying they always intended for Ryan to live there, and you agreed to it before backing out. Thought you should know what they are saying." Though the message was unsigned, I suspected it came from another cousin who had always been sympathetic to my position in the family. Rather than letting this information anger me, I used it as final confirmation that I had made the right decision in establishing firm boundaries. The next day, I emailed my parents directly. "I understand you have been telling family members that you invested in my house with the expectation that Ryan would live here permanently. To clarify, your gift of $5,000 toward my down payment was never presented as an investment with conditions attached. If that was your intention, it should have been stated explicitly and documented legally. Moving forward, I am open to rebuilding our relationship based on mutual respect. But my home remains my own, and my boundaries regarding it are non-negotiable." I did not expect a response, and I did not receive one. But sending that message represented another step in my journey toward establishing a healthier dynamic with my family, one in which I was no longer willing to sacrifice my own well-being to maintain an illusion of harmony. As weeks turned into months, the constant barrage of messages from my family gradually subsided. I maintained minimal contact, responding to direct communications but not initiating conversations. I declined holiday invitations, opting instead to spend time with friends who respected my boundaries and valued my company for itself, rather than for what I could provide. In this quiet period of limited contact, I found myself healing in ways I had not anticipated. Without the constant drain of managing my family's expectations and demands, I had energy to pursue interests I had long neglected. I joined a hiking group, took cooking classes, and even started dating again, something I had put on hold during the intense period of saving for my house. My home, once a symbol of achievement that had become a battleground, gradually transformed back into the sanctuary I had always intended it to be. Each room reflected my tastes, my needs, my life. The master bedroom, in particular, became a space of peace and recovery, where I could rest without fear of invasion or demand. 6 months after the confrontation, I received an unexpected text from Ryan. "Can we talk? In person. Just you and me." After careful consideration, I agreed to meet Ryan at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, where we would both be on equal footing, neither in my territory nor his. I arrived early, choosing a table near the door for an easy exit if necessary. When Ryan walked in, I was struck by how different he looked. Gone was the perpetual smirk, the entitled posture. He seemed smaller somehow, more subdued. "Thanks for meeting me," he began after ordering a black coffee, the cheapest item on the menu. "I know you probably did not want to. I am curious what you want to say," I replied neutrally. Keeping my guard up, he fidgeted with his coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. "I got an apartment. A real one. Not some temporary crash pad. And a job. Nothing fancy, just retail management. But it has benefits and room for advancement." "That is good to hear," I said, genuinely pleased despite my lingering wariness. "The thing is," he continued, "I had to do it all myself. Mom and Dad tried to help at first, but after what happened with you, they did not have the spare cash they usually do. Dad's retirement fund took a hit, and Mom's part-time job barely covers their extras." I nodded, unsurprised. My parents had always lived slightly beyond their means, counting on occasional financial support from me to fund their more extravagant choices. So I had to figure it out on my own, Ryan went on. Find the apartment, budget for the security deposit, buy furniture from secondhand stores instead of getting new stuff. It was, he paused, searching for the right word, humbling. It is called being an adult, I said, not unkindly. Most of us have been doing it for years. He winced but nodded. Yeah, I am starting to see that. The thing is, I never had to before. Every time I screwed up, Mom and Dad were there with a safety net. Or you were. This acknowledgement, this small recognition of the pattern that had defined our family dynamics, felt like a significant shift. What changed? I asked. Ryan looked up from his coffee, meeting my eyes directly. Honestly, hitting rock bottom. After you kicked us out, we stayed in that hotel for 2 weeks. Mom and Dad expected you to cave eventually. When you did not, they had to go home, and I had nowhere to go. I stayed on a friend's couch until he kicked me out too. Ended up in a shelter for 3 nights. That was a wake-up call. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, sympathy for his struggle, satisfaction that reality had finally caught up with him, guilt that he had experienced homelessness, however briefly. I am not telling you this for pity, he added quickly, correctly reading my expression. I deserved it. What we tried to do to you, taking over your house like that, it was wrong. Really wrong. I can see that now. Why did you do it? I asked. The question that had haunted me for months. Did you really think I would just give up my master bedroom? My house? Honestly? Yes. His bluntness was startling. You always gave in. Eventually, every argument with Mom and Dad, every time they compared us, every time they asked you to help me out, you protested, but ultimately went along with it. We all expected the same pattern this time. His words stung because they contained an uncomfortable truth. I had been complicit in the dynamic by repeatedly yielding to preserve peace, by valuing their approval over my own needs, by accepting the role of responsible caretaker to Ryan's perpetual child. I am sorry, Ryan said, the words sounding rusty and unfamiliar on his tongue, for what we tried to do with your house, for taking advantage of you all these years, for being, well, an entitled jerk. The apology was imperfect, limited in scope, and long overdue. But it was also genuine in a way I had never heard from my brother before. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means something. So where do we go from here? He asked. Can we start over somehow? I considered his question carefully. Not start over. No. Too much has happened to pretend the past does not exist. But maybe start from where we are now, with clear boundaries and different expectations. I would like that, he said, a tentative smile forming. I have actually been seeing a therapist, part of the program at the shelter. She has helped me see some things about myself, about our family. It is not easy to hear, but it is necessary. I guess. We talked for another hour, more openly than we ever had before. No magical reconciliation occurred. No dramatic promises were made, but a seed of a healthier relationship was planted. One based on reality rather than the dysfunctional patterns of our childhood. In the months that followed, I maintained my boundaries with my parents, engaging in limited contact on my terms. They made occasional overtures toward reconciliation, though these often included subtle digs about my overreaction to the bedroom incident. I responded with consistent, calm enforcement of my boundaries, neither engaging in arguments nor yielding to guilt trips. Ryan and I established a cautious new relationship. We met for coffee or an occasional meal, keeping our interactions in public spaces rather than my home. He continued therapy, working through the entitled mindset that our parents had fostered. I saw genuine growth in him, though I remained vigilant about potential backsliding into old patterns. My own healing journey continued as well. I sought therapy to address the people-pleasing tendencies that had made me vulnerable to exploitation, the excessive responsibility I had assumed for others' well-being, and the deep-seated belief that my worth was tied to what I could provide rather than who I was. Through this work, I came to understand that true ownership goes beyond legal documents and financial transactions. It encompasses owning my choices, my boundaries, my right to prioritize my own well-being. The master bedroom had become a symbol of this deeper ownership, this reclamation of my life from patterns of obligation and guilt. A year after the confrontation, I hosted a housewarming party, a symbolic reconsecration of my space. I invited friends, colleagues, and the extended family members who had supported my boundary setting. My parents and Ryan were not on the guest list, a choice that felt appropriate given the still healing nature of our relationships. As my guests enjoyed the home I had created, the space I had reclaimed, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The betrayal by my family had been painful beyond measure, a wound that still ached when probed, but it had also been the catalyst for profound growth and change, forcing me to confront dysfunctional patterns I might otherwise have continued enabling indefinitely. The true ownership I had fought for was not just of my house or my master bedroom, but of my life, my choices, my right to define relationships on terms that honored rather than diminished me. This was the lesson I carried forward, that some battles, painful though they may be, are necessary to reclaim what is rightfully yours, not just in material terms, but in the fundamental dignity of determining your own path. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of your generosity? How did you handle setting boundaries with people who refused to respect them? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to protect what is rightfully theirs. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, true ownership is about more than property. It is about owning your decisions and your right to be respected in your own space.